So I'm going to start on, for the first time, I'm going to start this way and go, yes, because the honorable members on this side are beginning to give me evil looks after the meeting, because they always last. But I just want to, so what we'll do, if I can ask the honorable members, so ask PRASA-related questions, or at least specify the entity you're referring to. My preference is that we start with PRASA-related questions and then go to REF-related questions, so that when the team from the SIU is dealing with the matters, then they can go in order. Start with PRASA-related matters and then go to REF-related matters. I just want to ask, and I know the Office of the AG is not presenting yet, but this is a simple enough question, and I've got two questions. One is, how prevalent is the problem of poor record keeping across the system? Is in your, and I know that it might be a bit of an unfair question, but is it something you come across often? One, and secondly, which is a question I don't know, is destruction of documents and evidence, government documents, a criminal offense or not? So the concealment or destruction of government documents, is it something that is a criminal offense? The third is a general point. We will note it with the committee secretary, and that is, there appears to be a deeply systemic issue with the legal profession right across the board. I think if we quantified the cottage industry of claims against the government that are manufactured or defective in one or other way, right across all the agencies, national and provincial, I think the amount of money is potentially staggering. And it's something that needs to be looked into, and we'll find ways of incorporating that into our work, because we're supposed to prevent financial loss. Honorable members, so I will start here on my right. Given the time constraints we all have, can I just ask that we really get to the heart of the issues as quickly as we can, so that we can cover all the honorable members' questions. Honorable Maduna, I'm assuming that your hand is up. Honorable Madlana, would you like to ask? Honorable Neil May? Honorable Bila? No, so what we're doing is you ask on both. So so I'll just sweep across like this. Start with, yeah, I'm just saying let's ask the questions in the order. So,
can I ask, Chair? You say we must ask we must ask for both PRASA at the same time. Yeah.
But I'm just asking that, since they started with PRASA, so when you ask your questions, start with PRASA questions, so that when they answer, they can deal with all the members' questions relating to PRASA, and then deal with all the questions relating to REF when they respond. So you don't have to limit yourself to one.
I'm Chair, sorry. I guess it won't finish as you said. We won't be able to finish if that's the case.
I think, Honorable Skosana, we can. If you can. If we do what we did in the joint sitting, we had two committees and everybody got to ask a question twice. We were just disciplined with the asking. Thank you.
I'll be disciplined, Chair. Good morning. No, Chair, I will be short. I think I would have wanted you partially captured me on the 100% subcontracting. I've never seen something like that. I think in my years of practicing internal audit, it's for the first time. And it begs me, I have one question that perhaps I would ask. I'm not sure if SIU would know, but I'm hoping. So the money that was paid was this money paid direct to the to the person that Shivambu would have subcontracted to, or it was paid to the Shivambu? Because I'm trying to understand, if it was paid to Floslo, what would have been a documentation that would be on place, since the tender would have been won by Shivambu? So I'm trying to understand, because really, if that's the case, I think that is pure corruption, Chair. But I think that's my first question. I will be short, Chair. I think, in terms of the employment of ghosts, I think there's just one thing, Chair, that one must mention. I believe that, you see, in government, one thing you must appreciate, the systems in government, especially in South Africa, there's usually either an act, a regulation that is regulating how things must be done in almost every process that you do, when it's either in a public entity or in a government process. I know that for instance, in human capital management, there are processes that guide in terms of when you upload someone, before you pay that particular person a salary, what documentation you must have, you appointment letter, the person should have went through interviews and so on and so on. So these things confuse me when you say that someone, they are ghost employees, because it means that there's someone that would have signed an appointment letter somewhere. There's someone that would have faked that someone would have went to an interview somewhere. And I think all these people must be taken to task. It's not only about disciplining them. And I think we must even take it further to that, we refer them to the NPA. I think that's the comment that I would have wanted to make and check. In terms of these ghost employees, what do they have? How did they get into the system? Because besides that, it would mean then that the person that would be, I forgot what is that system that they usually use to make payments. Because even the person that uploads people, Chair, usually uploads, a superior approves, and then a superior reviews. Now, I don't get it when someone will just get a salary. How does it happen? I think, Chair, so I wanted to check that. I think, Chair, one thing that, in terms of the document management, I wanted to have a comment in the question. Perhaps because I believe that in each and every document, there's a process to get hold of it and so on and so on. Does SIU perhaps establish who's responsible for these documents that they end up not getting? Because I can tell you, Chair, there is no such a thing as a poor record management in government. Anyway. They just choose to not give the documents that they do not want to give. On RAF, I think, Chair, on RAF, my first comment and the question would first speak about the issue of, perhaps to say that it's the legal professionals only would be incomplete, Chair. We must appreciate that in South Africa we have a problem of the health professionals that are corrupt, legal professionals that are corrupt, because in each and every, since I've arrived here, actually, each and every report that I've heard of, always, it does not leave these two doctors, they are always involved. Lawyers, they are always involved. And this, I then again say, Chair, it begs the question to ask the statutory entities where these professionals are registered at, what is their role? How can they be able to assist us to ensure that we keep this thing going forward? I think that is something that we must think around. And I would have wanted to say, because I think the advocate would have mentioned before that they are working very close with legal, with LPC. But I wanted to check in terms of the one that where doctors belong and these other professionals that you pick, are they coming to the party? What is happening around that? And I think my last question would have been, I see in many of these instances, a person gets a contract and I don't get it. Perhaps, advocate, you teach me something new. A person, for instance, the one of Fleet, got a contract. How does it happen? We give you a contract and pay you in advance. And I see in many of these contracts, we've paid so much, the person would have delivered less than what we have already paid. For instance, the one of that was supposed to deal with the padlock had only dealt with minimal cases, but there's a huge amount of money that the person had already been paid. Now, according to my analysis, I'm trying to understand, Chair, how does it happen? We give you a tender, you sign an appointment letter, we pay you upfront, because in terms of the PFMA, MFMA, and many other prescripts, it's no longer allowed. That is something that used to happen long way before 2000. I think, Chair, basically that's that. I do not think there's anything that I'm
As you land.
no, I'm actually done. I wanted to check the issue of reconciliations with RAF. Are they doing, because in their business, in their line of business, I would expect them that they are doing, well, it's usually recommended that you do monthly reconciliation, bank reconciliations, bank recons. However, in their line of business, because they're a cash business, that deals with making payments, one would expect that they are doing reconciliations, such things as weekly reconciliations, to check that all the payments that they would have approved through the process have been paid. And in coupled with that question, I want to check, how are they operating their bank account? They have a main bank account, 32 days, some accounts that they keep the monies for future obligation. How are they functioning their business? Because I'm trying to understand so that I can have an idea, Chair, where there are lack of adequate internal controls. Thanks.
Thanks, Honorable Maduna. Honorable Mahlala.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to honorable members and the delegation. Speaking after Honorable Maduna is a privilege because there's no way I would exceed his time. So the bar has been set a bit longer. I wanted to first, we'd always want to do this, to encourage and to appreciate the report, the work done by the SIU, and in light of dealing with these matters. It's quite a huge task. But I think we are at the point in time where we are all called upon to stand in line and defend what is correct for this country. And we encourage that. We have many, symbolic men who stand to fight what we are trying to fight. It's a huge task, but it must be commended. Because it turns the tide of history. We are coming from a space where we had a government that believed that black people cannot govern, that believed that black people were incapable of governing properly a country. And it pains some of us who are also professionals in our own right to wake up to these kinds of things every day because we are validating their sentiments. And it's an embarrassment. It's actually spitting on the graves of those who fought for this democracy. So we come every day with passion to try and prove, because I'm of no conviction that we do not have capable black people in these institutions. But equally, on the same breath, I think we are taking a soft gloves approach every time when we speak about the inability or incapability in referring to blatant corruption and act of blatantly disregarding processes. At this age, we can't speak of executives where we'll recommend that they must implement this system, try and put this document, recording systems and all of those things, because I think we're giving them an easy way out to say, no, we need to be retrained. There needs to be a training on how to manage funds and all of that. We can't. We can't. We must operate from the premise that suggests that if you are in an executive level at a state-owned institution, a multi-billion institution, you know what needs to be done. We don't need to mentor and coach you about what needs to be done, because the human capital recruitment processes themselves should be enough to ensure that the right people are at the right positions. And I think at times that we're arriving at this mess because those processes themselves are infiltrated. Sometimes boards and other people who are responsible for them get their friends into positions and they easily do what they want them to do. But I think we need to change that approach. I think we are approaching, implementing a soft gloves approach, and people can get away with saying, no, I didn't know, so we're trying to put in place this system. The record keeping is just a basic thing, as Honorable Maduna has said. There must be consequences for those that fail to furnish the relevant documents, and they must be as harsh and carry the same weight as would have been carried by the possible outcomes of the receipts of those documents. Maybe as a recommendation also, as a request, is that in the report, for example, I was looking at the PRASA report, if we can get the timelines for example, of when the recommendation was made to the MPA, to the NPA, or the recommendation was made to PRASA, so that we also need to have a traceable, time frames of who is lacking in bringing matters to finality. We need to know when the matter was reported, put a timeline to it. This is when the report was concluded and sent, and so that we can know exactly who to actually deal with. And I think those are some of the issues that are very important and are going to help us, because we need a different approach to this thing of corruption. As I said a bit earlier, whenever we come here, we are really overwhelmed by the scourge of it. So we need to take a more radical approach to it, where we need to make certain amendments to provisions. Let us be advised accordingly. Let the report speak to that, so that we can bring these matters to finality and stabilize our state-owned institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Skosana, are you good to go, or you were not going to speak? Yeah, no, I'll just cover everyone in sequence. So please go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and good day to everybody. Yeah, the disadvantage that I have is that I was outside, so I don't know how many members spoke and who spoke what. So that's why I was afraid of raising my hand, that I might be repeating something.
We can come back to you later if that's...
Now that I'm on the platform, let me continue. Chair, on the issue of ghost employees, on the PRASA matter, because it looks like in relation to KZN, Gauteng, and East London, on that slide that was referred, there are those employees who are classified as ghost because they were on the system while they were still working there, and some of them have retired and some have resigned. But now, is it an issue of record keeping, that they are still there on the system but they are not remunerated, or is there any remuneration involved, that those people are still there and they are still paid, or it's just that the system was not updated, so it's just an issue of record keeping and stuff like that? Is there any remuneration associated with those people who are still in the system, if they are no longer, if they were employees but they are no longer working there? The second point is with regard to officials who had already left PRASA by when the SIU was dealing with this matter, so they could not make recommendations for discipline against them. So what are the powers of the SIU in that regard? If a person has left the employment of PRASA and that person is no longer in any state-owned entity or government institution, what are the powers of the SIU with regards to that? And then with regards to the insurance of 30 million rand that is being paid by PRASA, and you find that they only cover claims of 100 million upward, and it looks like most of the claims that are submitted there, they are below that 100 million. Don't you think that there's something that is not right there in terms of the acquiring of that insurance by PRASA? Because you've got such an expensive insurance, but it will only cover very few people, very rare cases, because cases of that amount, I think they will be obviously very rare. But here we are having an entity paying such an expensive insurance, then that insurance is unable to cover most of the cases that are being submitted. Is there no foul play there in terms of the entity acquiring such an insurance? Yeah, the last point on fraudulent liability claims. I see that total liability paid is about 1.497 billion rands between 2012 and 2024. And then the report there says there's a potential savings of about 57 million rands, but there's a potential recovery of only 1 million rand out of the total of 1.497 billion rand. Why such a small amount that can be recoverable? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honorable Nelmay.
Thank you very much, and good morning to our colleagues here. Thank you very much. I'm not going to talk on other areas that have already been asked. I'm going to come back on PRASA. This insurance fraud, I think really now you've got your attorneys that we've now noticed is where there's been a lot of collusion. And now we need to start looking at the insurance companies and insurance fraud, because that showed up now in this report. But what I'm going to talk about is the qualifications of the executives. I mean, just recently we saw the chief engineer being, he was jailed for fraudulent qualifications. He was earning a salary of 2.8 million, friends with the CEO and everybody. I mean, when I was doing research, I just looked at the pictures. You can see birds of a feather flock together. You see them all in different places together. Now, what implications does that engineer have with documents that were signed off? He's not qualified. It was fraudulent, 15 years there. He signed off documents. Now, these trains that were ordered, their specs, obviously their specs would have, which is what we've seen coming through now, it has huge implications for engineering challenges. And we're sitting with that situation. And I wanted to find out, what are we doing about the challenges that have now come from a person who was supposed to check? And what are we doing about the checking of all those executives' qualifications? Because this is historical. I mean, you can look back. When I researched last night, I looked back at who's who and where it came from, and the external influences from Dubai all over. It is mind-boggling, that we allowed something like that to even take place. Coming to RAF, here we go. The same thing, attorneys and legal fraternity in systematic corruption. So what we've seen over the last week or two is systematic corruption from the legal fraternity and obviously supply chain management. It is absolutely. Coming to the boards and the CEO and all those that are on there, one I think is going to have to take a magnifying glass and start to look at that. One thing I didn't know is, what is the SAP licenses? What licenses are those? I saw there that they were paying for. I didn't understand that. And then again, the capacity of those running our SOEs and agencies. And then administration. Can the RAF, I was just checking, should there not be an administrator, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just piggyback quickly on that. There was an amount relating to Vexman. I think it was 170 million, or I don't know. It appeared to be a huge sum. When you answer, just say, it seems like a huge sum of money, but also says there was value for money. What time period did it cover? Was it several years, or was it 1 year, and so on? Just if you can let us know. Honorable Nilmay, the minister is coming here. She will tell us what must happen. Honorable Bila.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to our colleagues and greetings to everyone in the House. Chairperson, I was laughing alone here when PRASA people were presenting. That word, Swifambo, is not Chivambo.
Hey, I was worrying about the former Honorable Floyd, feeling that he's being targeted in this committee. It's Swifambo, right?
Swifambo, referring to
Swifambo.
all fleet.
Swifambo.
Swi. Swifambo.
Swifambo.
Yes.
Okay, can we please?
So we can get ourselves in trouble when we say Chivambo.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. On RAF, on duplication of payments, which also involve our attorneys out there. I just want to check if it is not possible for the claimant himself or herself to go straight to RAF and claim, or to make the claim, instead of in need of a middleman or an attorney to can help. Because in some instances, you found that the person who is helping our poor community members are getting the bigger portion than the one who is affected on the road or elsewhere. So I just want to check if it is possible that a claimant can go straight to RAF and claim for himself or herself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Atkinson. I'm coming this way. Don't worry, you are next. This. No, your chance is coming. These members usually sit here patiently.
Don't worry, by the time we get to you, all the questions will have been asked, so it's fine. Yeah. Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much to the SIU. And again, thanks for what you're doing for our country and the money you're saving the Treasury. And I said that to you, advocates, when you presented to us on the medico-legal claims. And you're quite right that there's sort of a golden thread between what's happening here and what's happening on PRASA as well. And that's where claims are made but are completely uninvestigated. I mean, you know, when you present on the medico-legal claims, you're telling us about people that have died, or, you know, people that have never been to specific hospitals or whatever. You know, and the same thing here with PRASA, where we see that, again, claims are completely uninvestigated and that money is just paid out to people, and that in some instances those people don't even exist. So my point is the same as it was about the medico-legal claims. I do hope that once you've done your investigations, that there's a proper process put into place, that every claim that's done in future actually goes through a specific list of, say, 10 or 15 points by PRASA or by the insurance team at PRASA, and also with medico-legal claims. Because I think of a situation where I've got car insurance with a private company, you know, and the claim might be only 15,000 Rand, but I get a visitor from a loss assessor. They check to see whether it's been properly reported to the police. They phone the people to see that the accident actually happened. And they're for minuscule amounts of money compared to the millions that we're dealing with here. And there's absolutely no checking. So my point in this is thank you for what you do, but I just do hope that once this is over, that we don't revert back to a situation where we continue to pay out fraudulent claims with absolutely no investigation at all. And then the second point to be made is this issue of the vanishing documents, you know, that documents very conveniently are no longer available. And I think the only way to resolve this, and this seems to be a problem right across the government, is to digitize. You know, we deep into the 21st century now. The fact that we're just relying on paper really does leave us at a huge disadvantage, and it leaves us, you know, at the disadvantage of the people that have got bad intentions. So if all these documents could be digitized, it would be very difficult for people to not be able to access stuff. And yeah, that's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was tempted to tease you then, go to Honorable Mente just to upset you, but Honorable Scosan.
Thank you very, very much, Chair. You know, though I won't be able to finish this session because of another engagement, but I wanted to say this quickly. I'll be on the SIU findings and pending findings as well. One, I'll start by saying the issue of Shivambo, the investigation has been going on for many years. I'm not sure whether, but I guess the SIU is aware that there's a court application by PRASA at the High Court of South Africa asking the court to allow it to use the so-called trains. The PRASA affidavit signed by the acting currently GCEO clearly states that the so-called trains are switchable for network and could be used even on limited scale. PRASA is asking the court to allow it to take delivery of the remaining locomotive, as a way to amortize the 2.6 billion which was paid for these locomotives. So the issue of public perceptions that those trains were not suitable for, I think those are your media. I don't want to call it Stratcom here, but I'll be honest to say, sometimes you read things which are not factual. Some of the journalists are more political more than anything else. And in fact, that confuses our society at large by saying Mr. Zivi is corrupt, and that character is going to sit with you for many years to come. So this issue of sensationalizing issues, for me, without basis, it's a serious concern. My colleague just said now that, as black people, in the past, people say that blacks are not capable. But I can rest assure you, we had the UJ councillor there, they charged 14 million rand, 14 million. It's not about color, it's not about color. You've got your Marcos Joster and others. There's many more. It's not about color. Corruption is corruption, even within the executive here, even within the MP here, members of parliament, honorable members. Corruption is corruption. It doesn't have color. It doesn't have a character. Now, for us to even think that it's naive, that perhaps it's only us. Some people I know, they want to get power back, but it's going to be difficult as long as we are here. The purpose of this investigation of PRASA, I guess from the SIU point of view, I think you have to ask the tribunal to rule on this matter, how to recover this fine on this new application which has been made now. I think it would be proper, because if there's money missing, that money has to be recovered at all costs. But the investigation cannot go on forever. I mean, starting from 2018, I guess the time frames, perhaps the resources are not enough, for investigators to do their job. Some will say that the findings were irrational because of the players from various accounting reliabilities and authorities. The board, as we sit here, under Nkwenyane, if I remember, I think there's Nkwenyane as well with PRASA then, But clearly, I think Advocate Muthibi, these matters has to be finalized. I mean, we cannot go on forever, investigating matters for over a period of 7, 8, 9 years. Some, whilst we are still investigating, will pass on without, accounting for their sins. Now, coming to the Siangena matter, I've seen on the presentation. In fact, I read on the presentation was sent on the 18th. I mean, on the 16th. On the Siangena matter, the High Court in Pretoria ruled that PRASA and Siangena should appoint an independent engineer to determine the actual work done by Siangena. The report of that independent engineer now has been placed before the High Court. The findings of the report of the independent engineer, like in the Swivambo matter, runs counter to the finding of the SIU. In fact, these reports prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the work was done and the service of infrastructure or equipment was delivered. The report, in fact, shows that PRASA got the best deal and even paid less for the Siangena speed gauge equipment. I'm not sure whether the SIU report have considered the report of this independent engineer? And if so, why do you continue with the witch hunt? If it's true, because some people view this investigation as a witch hunt. I'm not saying it's a witch hunt. The allegation made about this contract has been going on forever and ever. My last but one quick question. To the SIU, some people would believe that there's a double standard. If you remember very well, that the first proclamation implicated the board chair, Popo Mulife and Zoda Manasseh, who were responsible for the irregular appointment of the payment to Vexman attorneys. And Vexman attorneys was paid a whopping 400 million for the unlawful and irregular contract. But there's no consequences. Vexman, I never heard that Vexman would be amongst those companies which would be blacklisted. And as we speak now, those findings disappeared. That Vexman was paid 400 million. That findings disappeared into a thin air. The Auditor General of South Africa in 2016 and 2017 made findings about these Vexman attorneys, which was irregular. When are you going to the tribunal and recover this 400 million? That would be my question. My last question will be, the abuse of resources by Vexman Wenzel and the cozy investigators operating at PRASA, milking the state resources. If their names pops up, what is your plan, again, to really make sure that Vexman as well account for all these irregularities? Because remember, Vexman, in fact, they were sitting in those offices for how many years? Almost over two and a half years. Sitting in those offices. And indeed, the findings were there. I'm not sure about this second proclamation, whether really are you still going to pursue them. But indeed, it should not be look like there's a witch hunt against particular companies. But in particular, this one. I mean, 400 million is serious money. And the issue on PRASA, I guess the issue have to be clarified, whether those trains were really as proclaimed, and as sensationalized by the media, that they were too big, to be used. But we are seeing them now. We are seeing them on the rail. But out there, they are saying, no, these trains were too big, for them to be used, on our railway line. My last on the ref issue. I guess one of my colleagues said here that the issue of doctors, lawyers collaborating, perhaps is the minister or is us as members that we should have a policy on that to say people should be paid directly. Not this issue of a third party, like one of my colleagues said, that this money is somewhere, they disappeared somewhere on your trust accounts, and these noble professions of legal people and doctors. And if you read all these things, sometimes you ask yourself, as I said, it's not about color. Even the society, it doesn't matter whether you are educated or not. It means this thing is in a DNA of human beings. I can't believe that an attorney, an officer of the court, can really give someone, is paid X amount of millions, and is giving the victim not even a quarter of that money, 0.0% person where he's supposed to get 1,000 rand, he gives him 50 rand, he chows all the money. But I know perhaps that's criminality is not a matter of SIU, I'm not sure in terms of there's a thin line in that, but indeed, we can do better. Thank you so much.
Fortunately, Honorable Skosana, we are going to PRASA physically, and I hope you'll be there. We'll look at and touch those trains ourselves, so we'll get the answers. Okay, thank you. Honorable Kubek, welcome back.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the colleagues at SIU. Chair, I think on the SIU matter with PRASA specifically, I think my colleague here has asked a couple of questions that I wanted to ask myself, so I won't go into that one. I think the SIU team, Advocate Motibe, I think you guys need to be very careful with the perceptions that you guys are giving out to ourselves as South Africans, because at times it seems as though you guys are focusing on certain people or certain individuals in your investigations. Because I want to echo what my colleague, Honorable Skosana, just said on this thing with Vexman's attorneys. He's speaking about 400 million. I'm looking at another issue here with 170 million that was paid to Vexman's. And it's alleged that that the value of money was realized on that 170 million, even though it's not spoken now about how the tender was awarded. It was irregular. So the fact that it was irregular, does that now, and this is a question, does that now stop the irregular part of it and the realization of the value of money? Which one precedes which one? Which one is more important? Do we stop investigating them and stop asking for the money back from them, even though they are awarded irregularly, because now the value of money was realized? What happens there? I think that's a question, a more clarity-seeking one. And then the inability to unearth evidence with records missing, lost, or stolen, and companies being liquidated, and people dying or people leaving, resigning, and never to be found again. Another question, is that the end then of those investigations? Or is the SIU trying to look further into it to figure out, okay, after the missing documents, what then happens? Because clearly that document mismanagement at the entity, it's deliberate. People lose documents and they destroy documents so that they hide evidence. I think that's it on RAF. And then on PRASA. And then on RAF, the duplicate claims made to attorneys, claimants and sheriffs, amounting to 340 million. That's shocking. That's truly, truly shocking. If you've got sheriffs there, as in people who are supposed to be protecting the entity itself, accepting duplicate payments and claims, what is the, how does the SIU deal with that? And on the amortization, acknowledgement of debts, once these attorneys who are allowed to cooperate with the SIU have signed those acknowledgements of debts, is that the end? Once, okay, we found them that they're guilty, they've taken the monies, they've signed the acknowledgement of debts, what then happens to them? Are they arrested? Are they let go because they've now decided that no, we are going to be working with the SIU? What happens then? And then just lastly, of the 340 million rand, 317 million rand has already been recovered. I think that one is a well done on the SIU. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Mente.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I only have two clarities. The rest will be clarified by the departments. Just two clarities to the SIU on the PRASA one, as on the matter of Swivambu appointment and the tender process thereof. Because if they didn't have capacity and they outsourced 100% of what they were appointed to do, did you get, who appointed all those bid committees? What happened? How did they arrive at a point where they were convinced Swifambu has capacity? And then when Swifambu outsources the entire contract to someone else, what did the board do? I just want to understand, when you went into the offices and asked those questions, what happened? Because in my understanding, the board, once it picks up such errors, it would have intervened ordinarily as the authorities in the institution if the GCE is defeated by the bid, whatever committees that are there. The second one is, or before I go to the second one, because these ones of trains and everything that can be recovered and monies and everything, for me they are secondary, because they are now remedies on how do we get our money back as a state. How do we then get that value? But there's something wrong, and I'm not understanding it at all. So then the second one is on these panels of attorneys at RAF. There also I have a big question. Once the panel of attorneys is collapsed, now we have a high number of judgments. Ordinarily, the process of RAF doesn't get to that stage if it's not engineered at the office. So it means the investigation should look at how did the system fail to a point where it gets to that default judgment. Because the panel of attorneys as well was not doing much, more than that it was trying to be extinguishing the fires of the failures of the system. But once there is a spike, someone is engineering the problem so that the spike brings back this particular thing that for me it's a designed problem, so that there must be a failure of this institution, and then we must bring these people to save the institution, which renders the leadership of the institution very useless. So I want to understand there, if what are these anomalies that you picked up? Because the spike would not just ordinarily go. Because when they collapsed the panel, they did have a system of how they are going to counter whatever needs available, as well as how they were paying the panel and all those things. Because the panel itself, Chair, there were shortfalls in what was happening and what informed the leadership of RAF to collapse the panel. They didn't just do it out of spite and all those things. They were informed by a practice and a pattern they picked up on particular cases going into the panel, and the panel having to work on same cases and build up and then payments and all of those things. But there is some engineering of a problem which must persist and push the state to say, no, the leadership is failing, number one. Two, we're losing money, and the money shouldn't go there. However, the process of RAF says a file comes in, within a certain period of time, it should be finalized. If it's not finalized, then the lawyers go there. How do we pass this stage, and why are we not having people accountable to make sure that we don't pass that stage of finalization before it goes to court? So that's where the problem for me is, and I want to understand, how did you deal with that one? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Plose.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I think most of the issues have been covered, so it'll be very short. I promise I won't compete with Honorable Maduna and Skosana. They are leading in that department. Yeah, no, Chair. I think, Chair, I
I like how the SIU phrase the insurance fraud as not fit for purpose. Yeah, but it's fraud. No, it's deliberate, Chair, because I mean you can't pay, and I think the premium per month is even more than what the claims are. If we can get that report to say, now you've got this insurance that you are paying. It covers a certain benchmark, but you still, as an organ or as an entity, still needs to pay us claims. And if we were to look at those claims, you'll find that majority of them are even lesser than the premium. So it's insurance fraud. It's fraud. It's a systematic fraud. Some people are benefiting from these premiums and everything else. So not fit for purpose. Well, I get it from their side, but sometimes they just need to say these things as they are.
Like auditors, ne?
Oh, well, yeah. Again, the ghost employees, we ventilated this with the AG yesterday. I see the SIU says the Ziveza campaign was not properly coordinated and properly communicated. Again, was this a deliberate miscommunication from PRASA itself? So that they come back and say that they have not properly verified their employees. Was it do they find any deliberate misconduct from PRASA that the lack of communication was deliberate? Also, Chair, now with that, I think it's rough now, RAF, with the duplicate payments from the attorneys, claimants, and sheriffs. Again, I see a similar medical legal claims kind of system approach here as well, where people look at the system, they identify loopholes, and they go for it. I see that when the SIU comes in, most of the legal practitioners, they come in and they sign off an AOD, and then we recover some money. But is that really enough in terms of now accountability? Do we end there? Once the person pays back, do we not refer them to their relevant bodies for further accountability? Because, I mean, we have found you, we see that now we have caught you on the act. What then do we do after you've paid the money? And also, is there, just lastly, is there a proposal of the system? Because we are saying that the system with its 180 days allows for this duplicate. So did the SIU sit back and say this system allows, because this money that is recovered is paid back to RAF. Now they will come back and then it's going to be a cycle. So should we not propose a change in the system of payments? Has the SIU looked at that, and what's the proposal so that we can look into that? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Advocate Motibi and the
thank you.
team.
Thank
Then you
you.
can just start with all the PRASA questions.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Advocate. You know, I think my last question, I did not capture it correctly, or I did not include it at all, by saying, is the State Capture Commission on review? That was my last question. Thank you. Is it on the review? That's the question which I wanted to ask. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Atkinson.
Sorry, Chair, I only asked PRASA-related questions. Can I just pose, just very quickly, some questions on...
Yes, you can.
On the RAF. The other one I just wanted to ask the SIU was, apparently there's been a contract for the call centre. I'd just like to know if that's been investigated as to what's going on there. And the other is that there's a story that only 3% of the claims that go through are properly registered with the Road Accident Fund, which does leave the RAF open, exposed quite badly for claims that might be incorrect, that they would have a greater difficulty in refusing them. And then lastly, as far as the backlog is concerned, you mentioned the backlog. Who's going to be dealing with that backlog? Who's going to be appointed? How's that going to be? How's that going to be run, basically? Thanks.
Thank you. Over to you and your team.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll indicate where my colleagues would possibly also come in. Honorable Chair, I want to really start off with an observation that was made by yourself and other honorable members, amongst others, the document management and the seeming destruction of documents. This is a phenomenon that we come across in various other state institutions. And as I said, it becomes an easy way to frustrate investigations across. So that when we ask for documents, they simply say, no, we can't locate the documents. And I think in the past, it's always just been, all right, you can't find the documents, it ends there. Now, I think when we looked at the situation almost about 3-4 years ago, when we met with the team, I indicated, or it could be even more than 4 years, when we implemented the new strategy, we identified that amongst others, and when I read the reports of the investigators, the reports, more often, they would say, we went into this institution, we couldn't find documents, we couldn't go further. Then I said, no, it really shouldn't end there. And I engaged the teams, including their leaders, that we should actually change the way we do things here. So that when we request documents or even subpoena the documents, and we are confronted with that kind of a response, then the inquiry must go further. The inquiry must go further to say, where were these documents kept, and under whose custody were they kept? Why is it that the documents were not safely kept? And in that way, determine further consequences, further accountability, now related to failure to keep documents. Because there are regulations, laws and regulations relating to archiving and document storages. Those laws need to be observed, and failure to do so, we should hold all of those who are accountable to respond and account. And this goes at all levels, whether it's management, executive, and including the accounting officers or accounting authorities, which are the boards in state-owned entities. So this is a situation, and we're really glad that if it's identified as a phenomenon, and Honorable Atkinson indicates that digitization should be the way, and as part of our recommendation, of course, we'll recommend that, but it requires a substantive state action across to say this is really how this problem needs to be addressed. Honorable Batuna, the 100% subcontracting, I would like my colleagues to come in terms of actual payment, because the contract was awarded to Sui Fambo, thank you. The subcontracting was 100%, which is really an anomaly. Anomalous, ironical. Now, in terms of payment, I would like my colleagues just to come in to say what the investigations has revealed, were the payments paid to Swifambo or the other company which they 100% subcontracted to. Perhaps as a matter of structure, Chair, I can give my colleagues the opportunity now.
Yes.
Let them deal with that, and then we can proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. The payments were made to Swifambo. 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 Swi. Okay. Okay, the payments were made to the main contractor, Chair. And who in turn had a 100% subcontract with false law. So PRASA paid the contractor, their main contractor, and the main contractor then paid to their subcontractor in terms of then the subcontracting contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And of course, now the payment issues would, whether ultimately the appointment, whether the appointment was irregular or not regular, would also impact on whether there's going to be recoveries and so on. And then the civil litigation would come in terms of, you know, who do we really act against? But I would imagine it would be against the main contractor and the subcontractor in terms of recoveries. In terms of ghost employees, and the question comes up quite often, the investigation points out that there are those in the regions that have been indicated, or provinces. But in a sense, here the phenomenon is that there would have been, those employees would have been employed by PRASA before, and then they would either retire or resign and so on. Now the whole issue here is taking those, or stopping the payment further to those employees who resigned and so on. Now it appears that the system does not have the controls, either deliberately or negligently. They do not have the controls to stop payment. Now, the investigation should actually go further to say if the payments were made to these employees who are ghost, either resigned or retired, where does the payment go? Does it go into their original pay account? And what happens to that money ultimately? That's what we would like the investigation to go further. And if there's anyone who benefits from those payments, either siphoning the monies from the accounts, then we need to know. So the investigation should give us those answers, and the investigation is ongoing. We should be able to report at the next occasion we appear. Does the SIU know who's in charge of documents? That's the point I made, Honorable Chair. We should determine who was responsible for the document management. Ultimately, the accounting officer or the board are responsible. So we'll need to check if there are any delegations of authority or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, the accountability goes up to the accounting officer or the accounting authority, as the case may be. So we should end up knowing who to hold to account. I do agree that in terms of professional bodies, yes, we have had interactions with the Legal Practice Council, and we are satisfied that they are taking action against those implicated legal professionals. We haven't really had physical interaction with the, say, South African Medical Association and so on, but we do refer formally. We have had meetings with LPC. We haven't had physical meetings with the medical associations. We are aware that they do consider our formal referrals. Perhaps there's merit in cases where we really can call on them, and possibly the committee could consider that. How is it that they can help us in this plague, where the professionals are committing such fraudulent activities? The issue around the backlog, I think the contract on, this is ref. We'll come back to the ref questions.
No, maybe you can just,
proceed?
yeah, because I'm looking at time,
Oh, okay.
so we'll just
All right.
really fly through all of
the issue around the backlog, the contract has been found to be irregular. It has not met the procurement process. And the question, I think it came up as well from Honorable Atkinson, that who's going to do the work now? From where we sit, our role was to investigate the allegations that the contract was awarded irregularly. We've reached that point. The contract will be set aside. Now, operationally, is for the ref to start the process and ensure that they do the process appropriately and appoint whoever would be suitable to do the work. So that would be the part where ref would have to do the work. Is ref doing reconciliations? I think this is something that I would like the investigators to also come in, because from where we would expect that should be done. But I would like the investigators really to say, up to now, have we zoomed into sort of banking reconciliations? Does ref do that or not? Perhaps I can allow either Mr. Lekgetho or the lead investigator to comment.
Good morning, honorable members. Thank you. My name is Rediban Lebopa. In terms of the reconciliation, we have noted that there are challenges, but as part of our systematic recommendations, we have advised REF to also look into that, to ensure that there are reconciliation that are performed, and also go to an extent of ensuring that when payment are effected prior, they should also check if there was any writ of execution, so that they must avoid those duplicate payments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So that would probably sit in one of in our recommendations, because it is to be expected from any organization that in their banking systems there should be reconciliation process. Failure to do so, it's really maladministration on their part. Honorable Madlala, are we taking a soft approach or soft glove approach? I think we do take that comment, and that it's really, we understand it as a call to say, consequence management has to be meted out in whatever form. We're saying here that, in the main, you'd see that the consequence management takes the course of recovery of monies, cancelling contracts, disciplinary action against officials, NPA for those who are guilty of criminal offenses, and to other regulatory authorities. So I think the call here is to make sure that there is even-handedness and that the consequence management is meted out the same way in all these categories. And some of the questions came up that if the attorneys pay, sign acknowledgement of debt. Because again, it's an easy way out, so to speak. If they've got the money to pay, they will sign acknowledgement of debt, and it would be an easy way out. And so it shouldn't end there, and it does not end there. The acknowledgement, the acknowledgement of debt, and we do sign an acknowledgement of debt, not without considering other factors. The factors is on the civil litigation part, which Advocate Vanara oversees, is that at all costs we would like to recover what's due to the state institution, number one. Number two, there shouldn't be any other damages that we are overlooking. Now, if we are satisfied that the acknowledgement of debt would deal with the civil litigation part of recovering the monies, then we sign that, because it saves legal costs that we would have incurred. We shouldn't incur legal costs unnecessarily when we could settle that part. And we do check with the state institution whether that meets the recoveries. But it doesn't exonerate them, and we've said it before, it doesn't exonerate them from criminal action or any other professional referrals, and we do refer them to professional bodies. So we agree that we shouldn't give them an easy way out. There must be consequences for those who fail to keep documents. We agree that. And I've indicated that is an aspect. That really in the past, then we are here, we can agree that in the past, say 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't a focus area. People were let go. That if they tell us, no, there are no documents, we move on. No, it has changed, and we would like to make sure that those who fail to keep documents are kept, are held to account. The timelines for referrals, we do acknowledge that. Honorable Chair, we will go back and update the presentation where we now indicate if there are referrals to NPA, when, if there are referrals for disciplinary action, when were they referred, indeed, so that progress can be tracked. Honorable Skosana, I think the issue around the ghost employees, you asked about KZN, East London, and so on. In the main, as you would have seen on the slide, those were the ones who were in the system as employees, and they resigned. And it's just that internally, it doesn't seem like there's a system to really, or the controls, to ensure that when I retire or when I resign, then the human capital system should know or should stop payment. So the human capital practitioners should know that. But it doesn't seem to be happening. And the point I'm making is that the investigation should go further. If there's irregularities, if there's corruption here, we need to know. If the accounts are allowed to be alive, who is benefiting? Who is getting the monies that are paid to these ghost employees? The issue of record keeping, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, I think we've dealt with that. Is an issue that the system was not updated? Yes, it appears so. But again, is controls that are put in place. Is there a management override on the controls? That's what this investigation must tell us. Or are the controls ignored? That's what the investigation must tell us, and who should be held to account. The officials who left, I'm glad you raised this question, and I'm going to allow my colleague, Advocate Vanara here, to come in. Again, as we improved on consequence management, it used really to be just a practice before we really changed our approaches, that when employees leave, some employees would know that they are being investigated and they would resign. And in terms of the law, resignation, of course, terminates employer-employee relationship. But we are certain, we are so emphatic that it shouldn't absolve them from other consequences, whether it's civil or criminal. And again, this now, and that's the point that we made some time back when we came, that those who resign and join other state institutions, that system, that DPSA needs to, that register that we reported here before, that register has to really be alive and help us monitor these employees who crop up in other state institutions. But from a consequence management perspective, I'd like to give Advocate Vanara just a moment to say, how is it that when you have left, how is it that we deal with the employees from a civil litigation perspective?
Thanks, Chair and committee members. Quickly, if the employee has merely committed a misconduct and left the organization, unfortunately, that will be the end of the matter. However, if the misconduct has caused the organization, the employer, damages or loss of money, or there has been some criminal conduct, then a referral to the NPA would be made. However, we will similarly move to attach the employee's pension benefit with the pension fund to which the employee belonged to. Either, again, to save costs through the fund being approached to exercise its discretion to withhold the pension benefit. We don't pay costs. If the pension fund refuses to exercise its discretion, which they're entitled to do because they're an independent body, we are forced to go to court, to go and obtain a court order to preserve the pension benefit. That assists us when we go and recover the monies. We cite that official in the papers to enable us to recover the money. But of course, I need to make the point that at times the amount or the damage or loss suffered by the employer exceeds the pension benefit that we've attached, and we look at other properties that we can lay hands on, and if not, that becomes the end of the matter. We also, as Advocate Motibi indicated, refer these employees to professional bodies, because some of them are highly professional people who belongs to professional bodies, and therefore they are referrals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. The insurance, the exposure to insurance risk. Yeah, I call it insurance risk. So the risk of defrauding insurance. It really looks like it's a vulnerable area in various state institutions. And we have identified it as one of the focus areas at PRASA. And the investigation really should really go on and uncover the real nature of the exposure. The issue around how the insurance process or the insurance program run in the state institutions, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, because there would be claims processes, and we would expect that the claims processes are processed by, well, if they are digitized, they need to be monitored. If it's fraudulent claim, I think a point was made in this committee before that if you claim from an insurance, there's some checks that are done before the insurance pays out. We don't seem that in the state institution that those processes are robust enough. The underwriters, what is their role? So it's really a field that needs to be unpacked, and to a large extent, as we investigate this area, we'll probably need experts as well, so that we can make appropriate recommendations. But we have identified, there's fraudulent claims, injuries in trains that do not exist and all of that. So the issue around fraudulent claims is a problem. And of course, those who are involved, those who are either professionals or lawyers and all of that. The issue around the qualifications of executives. I think it's really, really important. The reference to the engineer at PRASA, the investigation really has to look at that part as objectively as possible. And we know that there's been a conviction. But that part, and this is where the civil litigation would also come in, the extent to which the individual, due to the misrepresentation, has caused damages, has caused losses to PRASA. That part must be quantified and must be quantified appropriately. We know that he's serving a sentence, but we have to do our part on the civil litigation part. If we need to cite him in the court papers to recover, we need to cite him. The issues around the trains that were bought and all of that, the investigation will will uncover, of course, together with PRASA, whether there was value for money or not. And again, my colleague, Advocate Vanara, wanted to make a comment on just generally on the issue around value for money. Because here, there would have been a business need to purchase trains, and PRASA would have depended on certain officials to ensure that the procurement is appropriate and that PRASA gets value for money. Now, when we investigate, we also go into whether the state institutions got value for money. And it's a legal inquiry. So the legals would work with the investigators to answer that question. It's an objective inquiry which requires an objective answer. And we will reach that response. I think my colleague is fine, but really just to indicate that that inquiry will be held and an appropriate response, an appropriate answer will be given. Sorry, the REF, the SEP licenses. I think there's a question around what the SEP licenses were for, and perhaps I would revert to the investigators here in terms of what they were used for, and whether they were used for that purpose. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The sub-license was procured for human capital and particularly for performance management system. So it was not used.
So you're saying the system was procured and then it was never used?
Correct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. That's the finding there. The issue around duplicate payments, I think it's on the REF. It's on the REF side. We have raised this in so many ways with REF, and the recommendations with regard to 180 days and all of that. Those would be made to REF. It is for the Road Accident Fund to attend to this situation. Put in place processes and capabilities such that they avoid duplicate payments. We have indicated to them the basis on which the investigation pointed out the duplicate payments. So we do expect that they would put in place controls to avoid duplicate payments. Is it possible to get the claimants to go straight to REF? Really, I think this ideally should be the case, in as much as we have said in the medical legals that the claimants, we should at all costs or as far as possible eliminate intermediaries, eliminate middle persons, middle lawyers, middle doctors, middle anyone. So that the state should be able to assist the public directly. The state should be able to create the capacity to assist the public directly. So that's really, I know that's the policy realm. We can only recommend, but we are of the view. We are of the view that, the process of the state should be able to enable direct assistance to the public, and that probably requires policy intervention. So similarly, the issue around checklist in terms of payments of claims, similar to the comments made on the medical legal side, the payment processes really just require additional attention. The process needs to be either remapped and capacity needs to be created to monitor the payments such that we don't, as state institutions, lose the monies as it was indicated. The issue of Swifambo, yes, I think we did indicate in the presentation that we are aware that the courts have ruled already on this, and we've got a focus. We've accepted that the court have made rulings, but there are focus areas that we look at, whether there has been maladministration, whether there has been any processes that failed. And again, the investigation, the new proclamation is informed by the outcomes of the Zondo Commission, which indicated that there needs to be further investigations, and the investigations are ongoing. So when next we appear, we'll give adequate and pointed findings of what has become. I think one important issue is to note that we do agree, Honorable Skosana, that the investigations cannot go on forever. The 2018-2019 proclamation has been concluded, and the report was submitted, save for the allegations that we received recently. That would be reopened only for that purpose. But otherwise, the 2019 proclamation is concluded. The 2024 proclamation was as a result of the Zondo Commission, and we will ensure that we speed up the investigation, reach the findings as supported by evidence, so that there's finality. The issue of Vexman, and I was checking with my colleague quickly, the contract was found to have been irregularly awarded. So it is very important to note that. And the investigation, I know, because I was informed that even the chair of the previous board was interviewed, and if we have reached finality on that, perhaps the investigators can indicate, but I expect that there would be some finding after the interaction with the previous board. Do you want to appraise the committee on where that process?
Thank you, Chair. We have gathered all the information in relation to this appointment of Vexman, and there are still some of the documents that are missing, whereby we are at the point where we need to pinpoint the exact responsible people that were involved in the appointment of Vexman. But we did identify that Vexman also subcontracted other forensic investigation that worked together with them in terms of producing a quite number of reports that they produced to PRASA. But I think that we are at a stage where we are trying to identify, and it's good that we have opened the investigation, because there are some information that are coming on board. And in that process, then we'll be able to identify who is really responsible for that irregularity. Thank you.
Can I just ask that, because I'm also mindful of time, that one of the things you do, and maybe we'll kind of square with the AG's office, we might send you a couple of questions for written response, because I also need to understand what was irregular about it, and a bit of background on what the work was for, because like I said, initially I assumed it was just legal services, and then I understand there are also some investigations. We need to understand what was irregular about it, and also an explanation of why the conclusion was there was value for money, because it's an amount that jumped at me when I saw it as well to a law firm. Okay, but I do want us to get to give the AG's office a chance. So if you can try and work through the.
No, thanks, Honourable Chair. There's quite a number of questions that are, but I see some of them were really repeated. Be careful about the perception created that we are targeting certain people. Honourable Kubega, we can assure you that we will do our work as objectively as possible. We would not want to be misdirected by any perceptions out there. Our investigations are really allegations-based. The findings have to be supported by evidence. And to that extent, we really don't want to mess up. And because we know that we are being challenged in the courts, in the special tribunal, so we don't want our findings to be found to have been flimsy, irrational, and all of that, because that our reputation is at stake. Thank you. So we will really not do that. Vexman's contract, I think we spoke about that. Document destruction, we addressed that part. The duplicate claims that are shocking, I think we looked at that. We expect that we'll work with REF. We make recommendations to improve on that. And AODs, what's next? I think I've addressed that we don't just end at acknowledgement of debt. There are other consequence management related to these firms. Honorable Mente, the issue around Swifambo outsourced 100%. How did the bid committees satisfy themselves that Swifambo has got capacity? I'm not sure if you're able to comment just quickly in the interest of time, whether that you're still looking at that or have we finalized that part? And then the issue around the panel of attorneys at REF, look at why the spike in default judgments. Okay, yes. Whether there's some human engineering here, whether it was deliberate that, whether is it deliberate that the default judgment spikes. I would like to give the team the opportunity to comment. If we haven't reached that stage, we'll take that into account and make sure that as we investigate, we look at that part. Do you want to comment?
Thank you, Chair. We are still looking at the procurement process, but what we can say at this stage is that there were just failures by the committee to pick up glaring issues, especially on the part of these irregularities and inadequacies in terms of the Swifambo bid. This includes the bid tailoring in this case. So we are still busy collating all the information in terms of the committees and also the approvals by the board. At what stage did they felt it was necessary for them to approve the bid? So once we are done with that process, we'll then provide a report on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you. The issue around the collapse of the panel, that REF had a system to mitigate whether there was, have we reached a stage where we have discovered whether there's human engineering? If we are still looking at that or not, Mr. Lachel.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. We are still looking at that. We are wrapping up the investigation. We are currently interviewing previous board and all the people that were involved so that we can understand the rationale why this didn't happen. So we are at that level where we have not yet come to that point to make that conclusive decision. Thank you.
But as I say, Honorable Chair and Honorable Mente, we will take that into account so that we are aware that there hasn't been any deliberate human intervention here to engineer the default judgment so that the panel can be reinstated. We'll look at that. Honorable Blosse, insurance not being fit for purpose. I think it was more around the insurance program that PRASA has to make sure that the insurance that they acquire or the insurance that is in place is fit for their purpose in terms of claims that they would usually receive or claims that are covered, the exposure that is PRASA is exposed to. The fact that there is fraud in the insurance, I think we are agreed that there is insurance fraud, and as a result, there is a call to review the insurance program. Honorable Chair, or the last one, whether the commission report is on review. Honorable Skosana, I really can't formally or authoritatively confirm that. We can check. We have had the reports that, you know, those who were implicated took the report on review or not. We can't at the moment confirm formally. We can check that.
Yeah, so I think the process is what you take on review is a specific finding pertaining to you, you know, because the commission had different issues and entities and so on. I think we should check as the committee. I'm not aware that the entire report has been taken on review. However, there are instances where people are challenging the findings against them, and then the courts will have to make a determination.
Chair, perhaps I was supposed to quantify it by saying there were 11 applications which were made about the State Capital Commission, known as Zondo Commission. There's 11 applications in the High Court. That alone tells you that there's issues about the commission. But Chair, before I leave, I just wanted to say I found it very strange that the same people who were prosecutors, they are now joined SIU, like Advocate Pretorius SC, Chakelson as well, who were representing some other and Mutau SC. For me, it's a referee and a player.
Honorable Skosana, so there are two issues with your input. The one, you're directing them at the wrong entity. They haven't joined.
We'll call the NPA. I know.
No,
Chair
sure.
will do, yeah.
So, but the comment is not for them to respond to. So please.
Yes. What I was saying
joined
was
NPA, Chair, not
yes,
SIU.
the joint true. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Okay.
helped me. Thank
No,
you.
no, no. So I was just because I didn't want us to. So have you dealt with all the questions, Honorable Atkins?